Alrighty, looks like we're ready to go. Our agenda today will cover the following bulleted points. We'll review the RFAs, the objectives for grant proposals, the narrative, budget, submission requirements, and then I'll answer any questions that you guys may have. I did want to be sure and point out that our agency currently has 2 open solicitations or RFAs under the 22-23 State Crisis Intervention Program. The first involves behavioral health deflection programs, and the second involves specialized court-based programs. And this webinar addresses both solicitations. The total amount of funding available for SCIP is just under $3 million. Funding has been divided into 2 separate RFAs. One allocates approximately $2.2 million for behavioral health deflection and another $761,000 for specialized court-based programs. There is not a minimum or maximum amount set for requesting funds for either solicitation. Neither is there a match required. All requests for funding will be reviewed by CJCC's Criminal Justice Grants Committee, as well as the full council, which also serves as Georgia's SCIP Advisory Board, a federal requirement of the grant. I do want to highlight this is a reimbursement-only grant, and potential awards are also subject to review and approval by the Bureau of Justice Assistance. So there's kind of like an extra approval step, if you will, for this SCIP funding. So after we receive approval from our council, we will work with our federal partners to gain their approval of those awards as well. Grantee notification of successful applicants will follow after that. These grant funds for both tracks will be administered by our agency. Awards will be made on a competitive basis. Applications for the behavioral health category are due by Friday, October 18th by 5 p.m. All applications for the specialized court-based category are due on Friday, October 11th by 5 p.m. Both are due by electronic submission using FormStack link provided. So due to this restriction, we do ask that you aim to submit your application at least a day ahead of time, just in case there are any technical issues. If you do have any technical issues with FormStack, then just email me or give me a call and I'll be glad to help you walk through those. The performance period for this grant is the same for both. It's January 1st, 2025 through December 31st, 2025. So right at the year. Under the behavioral health category, applicants are limited to community service boards, health departments, treatment providers, local child welfare offices, nonprofits, and community representatives addressing gun violence reduction programs and initiatives through behavioral health deflection. Units of local government in the state can also apply on behalf of first responders, public defenders' offices, courts, school systems, and local prosecuting offices. For the second, eligible applicants for the specialized court-based programs, eligible applicants are limited to accountability courts that provide criminal justice and civil proceeding services for what we call the less than 10K jurisdictions. So to qualify as a less than jurisdiction, a court must provide services to a local government that was not eligible to receive a direct burn JAG award due to their small size in FY21 or FY22. A list of eligible localities is listed in the appendix of the court-specific RFA. If you have any questions related to your jurisdiction's eligibility, again, just reach out to me directly and we can walk through those. If your court is not one of the less than 10,000 jurisdictions listed, this does not impact your ability to apply under the behavioral health deflection category. That program solicitation is a separate application altogether. If the court is seeking funding to address gun violence reduction programs and initiatives through behavioral health deflection, then they would be eligible to apply under that first category. Regardless of which solicitation an entity chooses to pursue, all proposals must adopt or expand promising or evidence-based programs that aim to prevent or reduce crime and violence and target the risk factors that might be more likely to lead to this kind of violence. We'll briefly talk about the programmatic requirements for this grant. The FY22-23 SCIP award to CJCC is a federal grant, and as such, all programmatic reporting will be determined by BJA, our federal partners. So programmatic reports will be due quarterly, and reporting measures will be determined after the award activation. Because of the broad range of potential eligibility of programs, we wanted to allow a little bit of leeway, so to speak, in determining what those reporting mechanisms will be. So the Statistical Analysis Center, which is housed at our agency, they will have they'll have an analyst who will work with each subgrantee to help determine those programmatic reporting metrics. And again, those will be done after awards are made. There are two program categories under the behavioral health deflection solicitation. The first is community treatment and violence intervention programs, and the second is intervention services and education programs for youth and children in need of services. There's only one category under the specialized court-based solicitation, and for it, grant funds can be used by eligible accountability courts to expand the capacity of courts to assist programs who may be more likely to become involved with violent crime and support the implementation of peer support programming. So first up, grant programs aligned with community treatment and violence intervention program. These programs use evidence-informed strategies to reduce violence through tailored community-centered initiatives. Such programs can help reduce the likelihood that an individual may become involved with the criminal justice system and engage in violent crimes. Instead, they divert them to receive community-based treatment and other services. These multidisciplinary strategies engage individuals to prevent and disrupt cycles of violence and retaliation, and can establish relationships between individuals and community assets to deliver services that address trauma, provide opportunity, and improve the physical, social, and economic conditions that often drive violence. Examples of these would include crisis centers, mobile crisis units, including both co-responder and civilian-only projects, crisis receiving and stabilization facilities for individuals in crisis, again, peer support specialists, diversion programs, technological supports, and this would include like smartphone applications to help assist patients as they navigate mental health and related initiatives, suicide and crisis prevention and referral to services, civil legal responses, specialized training for individuals who work with or are in families of crisis, and other innovative behavioral health related programming. The second objective will be intervention services and education programs for youth and children in need of services. These are supportive, directive, and teaching initiatives that aim to improve a youth's level of functioning related to mental health. These programs are typically offered in a community-based care environment and help redirect youth with behavioral health issues to treatment and support services instead of arrest or other involvement with the criminal justice system. Examples of this would include programs that focus on the development of nonviolent conflict resolution skills, active listening, and ways to help heal from trauma. Such programs could teach youth alternative healthy ways to resolve conflict and reiterate the dangers of violent crime, particularly that of gun violence. Whole family support services are also eligible to help ensure basic needs are constantly being met and reduce the likelihood of a youth's future involvement with the system. Like the other categories, however, violence intervention specifically and not prevention is a key priority of these solicitations. The third category, technically, but the second RFA or solicitation is the specialized court-based programs, and this is the one that focuses specifically on peer support programs within accountability courts. So these programs serve to connect individuals who have like experiences with mental health and/or substance use disorders. They provide support and acceptance to those currently struggling with such disorders by those who have experienced recovery. This is particularly important because with the proper training and knowledge, peer support specialists can be critical in helping others recover from mental health or substance abuse disorders. And they can assist them in finding support, resources, and reintegration. Okay, so now that we've covered the three main categories or tracks for funding initiatives, we'll now discuss the information to be included within the program narrative. The program narrative section of the application will require applicants to provide a project description. So basically, what is to be accomplished with the proposal. A justification for why this is needed, and then further breakdown to include goals, activities, and services that will take place during the grant program. All of those should be included in the program narrative section. Grant awards will be made for 12 months. And let's see. Okay. In that same vein, under the program narrative, a few more things I wanted to highlight. A timeline of the grant activities will need to be included. They can either be included in the narrative itself, or you can upload an attachment via the form stack link. And the timeline should include the grant activities, who's responsible for completing these activities, and then the time frame that they'll be completed in. If anyone will be using a contractor to provide services, we do ask that you include a contract or an MO for review as well. The budget for the project proposal must be submitted on CJCC's budget detail worksheet. A link is provided within the RFA PDF, but it's also linked on our website as well under the solicitation announcement. All portions of the budget are subject to review and approval by CJCC. These are set forth by federal guidelines. And then on the top of the worksheet, just a note, the subgrant number and grant type, you can just leave that blank. Don't worry about filling that in. Again, continuing with the budget, please be sure to justify each line item expense at the bottom of the narrative section on that worksheet. So for example, if personnel positions are needed for the grant activities, just please list this and then be sure to include the role that they play within the project. Again, that narrative section is at the very bottom of the worksheet, so you'll have to scroll all the way down. But you can also upload like a Word document as well when submitting your application if that's easier. We'll take it either way. A few examples of frequently asked unallowable and allowable expenses are listed in section 2 of both RFAs actually. But a complete list of unallowable and allowable expenses can be found on the Department of Justice's financial grants website. So again, because it's a federal award, we are subject to those. But after this webinar concludes and we share the slides, you'll have access, of course, to the link included here. And it'll also be included in the FAQ that we're sharing as well. Again, all applications must be submitted electronically using the FormStack link. This link can also be found on the CJCC website under current opportunities, as well as in the RFA. The FormStack portal, if you're familiar with it, it does allow you to save and resume an application. So if you choose that option, you'll receive an email link and you can resume your application at a later time. But again, just be sure to submit it well before the deadline to make sure there's no technical issues. Additionally, information can be copied and pasted in each section of the narrative. So when submitting your application, please be sure to upload your budget detail worksheet as well as the designated grant officials form. So both of those are going to be they'll be indicated as required on the FormStack link. And again, both of these forms are linked in the RFA and listed on our website. Just as a additional note too, the risk assessment is not going to be a prerequisite for applying. Risk assessments may be completed after an award is made. So a few key takeaways regarding the SCIP RFA. So the award period is January 1st, 2025 through December 31st. All proposals requesting consideration for funding must be aligned with the identified objectives. And all information regarding the application requirements is included within the RFAs. Again, this is a federal grant awarded to CJCC, so this will be a reimbursement-only grant. Award notifications, I will say we're aiming for December 16th. But again, final approval will be pending the Bureau of Justice Assistance's approval as well. So we'll work to keep you guys updated on the status, but again, it may be delayed depending on how our federal partners are working with us. Again, applications are due either Friday, October 11th or October 18th, respectively. The courts are due on the 11th, and then a week later, the behavioral health deflection RFA closes on the 18th. Okay, if you would like to subscribe to CJCC's email listserv for grant opportunities, you can scan this QR code here. I'll leave it up for a second, and we can transition over to the questions section of the workshop. So before we get into unmuting everyone, I do want to answer a couple of questions that were submitted via email ahead of time. So we'll go ahead and address those first. And I'll leave this up here for a second. So the first question that was submitted asked how many awards will be offered and what is the available funding per award. So I think most of that, or the available funding, was listed at the beginning, roughly 2.2 million for behavioral health deflection, and then 761,000 for the specialized court-based programs. Now, for specific awards, there's no minimum or maximum that we've imposed. We're just asking you all to tell us, what is needed, and then we'll have to address those specific requests as they come in. And regarding how many awards will be made, again, that'll just depend on the total number of requests and how much funding is requested. Okay, the second question says, is the focus of the grant on behavioral deflection of gun violence offenders, victim survivors or of gun violence, or both categories? So again, that question is the focus of the grant on behavioral deflection of gun violence offenders, victims and survivors, or both? So for this one, again, I think it's we want to keep in mind that it's got to be intervention. So the target subject, I guess, recipient of these services, it is really going to be determined, by the need that you all have, as long as the program is intervening to prevent violence. So I hope that answers the question. If you ask that question and you still are not super sure, just reach out and we'll talk specifics. Okay, and then the last question that was submitted was, could you please provide some information about BJA's performance measurement tool? What data will have to be collected by grant recipients? So I don't know if some of you might be grant recipients already, but the PMT tool, it's pretty straightforward. When you're talking about the data that we're going to be collecting, again, there's a wide variety of potential programs that could be funded through this award. So that's why we're going to assign a statistical analysis center analyst to kind of work with everybody to determine what those specific measurements should be. I will say regarding the court-based programs, we are looking to potentially identify some type of baseline for all of those, since those will be consistent, and then go from there. So that one's the courts is going to be a little bit different, but for the behavioral health side, it'll be determined on the program that's chosen. Okay. So now let's see.
You have a
If
few
anyone,
questions
yeah,
first on the chat. The first, I've answered a few, but the first one that I stopped answering was, they are providing a certification training for educators, social workers, and counselors to become gun violence prevention specialists to provide gun prevention psychoeducation groups in schools. Does this qualify?
the focus is on prevention and not intervention. I think we would probably need to talk about the specifics, because as long as you can categorize it as truly intervention, then yes, it would be eligible. So maybe we just need to talk through the details of that.
And we'll come to your live question. I want to just touch on the ones in the chat. For behavioral health deflection grant, would the program have to address both objectives, or can it focus on one?
I'm sorry, read that again.
For the behavioral health deflection grant, would programs
Yes.
have to address both of the objectives, or can it just focus on one?
Focus on one.
Okay. And then they're trying to determine who would be eligible for services under the intervention in education grant. Are youth with no history of gun violence use eligible if there are risk factors for gun violence, like trauma or mental health diagnosis?
So that is what that's what we're looking for you all to kind of tell us. So basically in your need statement, in your argument, explain to us how your program specifically would, I guess, reduce the likelihood that they would commit violent crimes potentially. So if you're going to argue that from a trauma or mental health diagnosis, that's certainly one way to do it. So you all just, as the grant applicant, you would just tell us from your perspective why this is truly how are you intervening in the lives of these youth. So yes.
I think you addressed this one, but there is no cap as to what we can ask for, as long as as long as it is proved in the budget narrative.
That's correct. We can't promise funding for all of it, but you certainly can ask, and you should ask for what you need, and then we'll address as much as we can. Absolutely.
This person is a nonprofit private school supporting justice involved middle and high school students. Does the grant allow for indirect or administrative costs? What's the larger grant umbrella like Title IV?
Yes, it does allow um, it does allow for some of those costs, but I don't think I understand. Mia and Laura, you may be able to help me with this. The larger umbrella like title.
Um,
Not sure
I'm
about
not sure I
I
I'm
don't
not
know
sure
if
I understand
Natalie wants to speak to it because I'm not, yeah, I'm not sure either.
I'm sorry, will you repeat what the question is that you asked me? I apologize.
would
You would like
it
me
make
just to explain the priority
Yes.
points or the funding umbrella? Which one?
Well, first, how about let's tackle the funding umbrella. What are you asking there?
So sometimes with US Ed or federal grants, they will have a larger umbrella like Title I, Title II, or Title IV. I was curious what the grant number was. I know you said it'll be on the application so that I could look up the overall umbrella because sometimes that depends on how we write our grants. Like,
Oh,
you know
I
what I mean?
think
Like if it's a Title IV-A or Title IV-B or it's Title IX or 10,
mhm.
like that's
So
kind of helpful to know.
this grant falls under, I believe, the Safer Streets Act.
Okay.
That's what it was created under. But if you put your email in the chat, I think we could send you out the federal solicitation if
That would
that's
be awesome. Sometimes that can just make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you're familiar with the Burn Jag Award, but this is also a burn award, so to speak. So
Okay.
it falls under there too. But yes, we'll certainly send you everything.
And then I guess I'll just ask all my quick questions. And once I know that, I can probably answer the second one. I was just wondering if there were indirect costs or admin costs that were allowable under the grant. I know you said that in the packet it will see all the unallowable things, but I was curious if administrative costs aren't allowable
Um,
line item.
think so. I'll need to go back and double check a couple of things, but I think it'll depend on a case by case basis on basically what the rate is, which program you're running, that kind of thing. So because especially under the behavioral health, there's such a wide range of programs there. We're allowing for a little bit of kind of self-determination almost, and then once we have the applications, we'll be able to kind of go through. I know that's not super specific, but this
No, but that
skit
helps. That definitely
okay.
helps.
This
And then
grant
my
has
last
been
one is, are there priority points that can be awarded? Like, are there maybe 6 regular indicators and maybe 2 priority points where you get more points if you hit certain things?
not for this grant.
Perfect.
It must be intervention.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, the next one is they are representing the county sheriff's office looking to utilize the behavioral health deflection to fund a two-pronged approach. The first is acquiring detention center equipment to improve personnel violence detection and intervention response time. And then the second is the development of detention center programming for inmate behavioral intervention developed by the agency's crisis intervention certified peer support specialist. Would this program align with the funding opportunity?
Just off the top of my head, that sounds like it would align, but let's talk details and then we can just be certain before we proceed. But off the top of my head, that sounds fairly in line. I'm sorry, who asked that question, Mia?
Austin Bond.
I'll follow up with you, Austin.
Next question. Does a project have to include both components? 1, community treatment and violence intervention programs, and 2, intervention services, education programs for youth and children in need? I think you already said that.
And there is some, there is a little bit of overlap in those two, I'd say, but just one.
The next is this a one-time grant or will funding be continued?
So this is a formula grant, which means we do expect to receive at least a couple more years of funding. So that'll just depend, on the federal government and how things come down from there. But we are expecting a couple more years at least of funding.
Is surveillance equipment eligible if it is used to monitor and intervene during instances of behavioral health crises or violence?
That is a good question.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I would say, so based off of, what I have understood, I don't know if that's going to be the top priority when it comes to decision making, but I do believe that it's an eligible expense. Like the expense is eligible, but as far as, the strength of the whole entire application, I don't know where that will fall.
Mia, can you make note of who asked that question, and we'll follow up as well. So again, with this grant, it's slightly different, like I said, because we do have to receive approval from our federal partners as well for any subgrants we make. I would just say make your argument very strong because we may agree and say that it falls in line, but we've also got to, convince our federal partners that that's the case as well. So kind of like Mia said, it sounds like it, but we just can't guarantee what they may decide is a priority. And yes, thank you. You can download it.
Okay, I think that is all of the questions in chat. If anybody wants to come off of mute and ask anything.
Okay. Well, again, if anybody has, some of these have been a little bit generic, like I said, just because of the program, the wide range of potential programs that are eligible. So if you do have a question about your specific program, please just send me an email or give me a call and we'll talk through those specifically. Yeah. I don't see any. Thank you, Laura.
Other questions, anyone? If you have a question, probably someone else does too, so feel free to ask.
Hey,
What are the-
I was just wondering, for new programs, are we qualified? So we are a fairly new RCO here in Elberton, and where the resources are slim to none. And so we are actually just now developing a juvenile program where we're going to be partnering with juvenile probation. We have a certified youth specialist coming from Advantage out of Athens to work with the youth on this particular project we're just starting. So by us being a fairly new program just getting started, do we qualify?
I mean, new programs certainly do qualify. We would just want to make sure that we're not overlapping any funding or anything like that. So it would just need to be expanding either the program that you're beginning or adding a new element or something like that. We want to make sure we're not, duplicating funds that you guys have already received or allocated. Yes, my phone number is right here so that you all can see that. I'll also send it in the email that goes out. Can a county submit
new applications?
Well, if you've got, I will say this, if you want to apply under two different categories, I'm trying to think, because there's no maximum amount that you can apply for. I mean, you might as well just, potentially just put it in one application, but I mean, we'll certainly review both applications if you want to send those in as well. Are there any particular counties not for this award?
For the accountability court one, the court specific one, though,
Oh,
that's the
yes.
less than 10K counties, which are listed in the appendix of
Yes, thank you.
that RFA.
Yeah, so we provided, like Laura said, we provided an appendix that has all of those counties that are eligible listed. I'm sorry, I misunderstood the question.
So there's two, for Chris, there's two RFAs. There's one that's the behavioral health deflection, and that is not specific to any county, but under the accountability courts, the less than 10K, there's an appendix at the back of that RFA that lists the eligible counties.
And if for some reason you feel like your locality should be listed on that list and isn't, or you have questions, again, just reach out and we'll triple check everything. But yeah, just definitely reach out. Thank you, Laura.
Trying to go back. I think we got everything.
How does these reimbursements for the grants work? If you want me to, Rachel, I can speak
That'd be
on
great.
it. Okay. So essentially what happens is once you have accepted the award and signed all the documentation, you would then either select monthly reimbursements or quarterly reimbursements. And in order to receive a reimbursement, you will have to submit a sub-grant expenditure request, which would involve you providing backup documentation such as proof of payment and invoices. And then your grant specialist will review it, approve it, and then we essentially issue a payment within, I would say within like 30 to 45 days, you would receive reimbursement.
So for Carol's question, I was just going to say, what I understand when you're saying the county and the two applications, so you're seeking to possibly submit an application under each of the categories. So one for each of the RFAs. I think in that case, then yes, you would need to submit two separate applications, right, Rachel? Like if they're applying under the behavioral health, but
Yes.
then also under the accountability court, less than 10K, that would be two, I think, separate applications.
Yes. Let me skip back through here. Sorry.
Okay.
But yes, that is correct. My computer's kind of lagging. So technically, well, this is very slow. Okay, let me just go back. So yes, so technically there are these are two separate solicitations. So it's not like you wouldn't be they're two different pots of funding. So you wouldn't be competing against yourself in that way. So they're two completely different. So you can certainly submit two applications. There. If you're just looking at the behavioral health solicitation and you're looking at those two categories, then that's where you would probably just want to submit one application covering multiple categories. But yes, if you're also looking at the courts, like she mentioned, that's going to be a separate pot of funding, a separate application altogether. So you would need to submit one for both. We just combined the webinar. I hope it didn't cause too much confusion, but we just combined it all into one since it's all under the same umbrella of the state crisis intervention programming. But yes, that's a great question. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. I cannot figure out how to get my contact information back up on the screen without
It's
clicking
coming.
through all these. So sorry,
coming.
everybody.
There it is.
Yeah. Okay. So again, just reach out if you guys have any questions. We're here. This is, our first year administering this funding specifically. So we are going back to, everything and checking and rechecking. So, So bear with us, but we'll definitely walk through the process with you and answer any of those questions that you may have. Again, we're going to post this recording, and then once that's available, I'll send a copy of this out and all the slides, as well as just an additional FAQ that may answer, hopefully any other questions that pop up. But if there are no more, we'll go ahead and conclude the webinar. Thank you, everyone, for attending. We appreciate it.
Thank you.